Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Lowdown. Today I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Sally Needham, formerly of the FA, now Sheffield United, to speak about all things neuroscience and its application within football. Sally, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Connor. Nice to meet you. And thanks for having me.
Sally, I suppose where we start with every podcast is asking the guest where their earliest football memory occurred, and with yourself, it's none different.
Do you know what my football earliest memory that links a little bit into? I've got a couple really in a way. I don't know which one really is, but I can remember going to Sheffield to the City Hall when Euro 96 happened and Gaza did his overhead free kick out with my dad. And then my earliest kind of other football memory was going to Barnsley, big Barnsley fan, went with my dad and I were at the front. And I come running back to him because at that time I wasn't seated or anything. Coming running back to him, and I think I said to him something like, "Why have we took so and so off and put so and so on when he's a crosser and he's a good head of the ball, and like we've put a smaller one on?" And so my dad always said to me, that's the first time I thought, you know what, she could probably get into coaching and playing. And then obviously then I did. So got a little tool really. My earliest memory is probably Euro 96, but my dad's probably earliest memory of probably my interest in football was probably when about 7 or 8.
And that's kind of a nice segue into the next question, Sally. Obviously, you've gone down this tremendous path, coaching. I suppose, what were the small set of sparks along the way that kind of ignited that curiosity and passion?
Do you know what? I never really thought about coaching. I played not at a great level, just locally at Barnsley. And then when I went to college, my tutor at the time was also coaching at Barnsley Girls Centre of Excellence. And he was the manager at the football team at the Barnsley College. And part of my role, I was vice captain first year and captain second year. And everybody kept saying I didn't get it for my football ability, I definitely got it for my talkativeness. But he just said, you're quite good at taking like the warm-ups and you seem to be good around the girls. And if you were missing late because of lectures, I'd kind of set up sessions and got them going. And he just said, you fancy coming down and helping out at the Girls Centre of Excellence, which I did. And that kind of where it was. And up until leaving university, I was never going to go into coaching. I did my level 1 at college. I did my level 2 and UEFA B at uni, so I was quite early as a female then. I was 20 when I got my B licence. And to be fair, the FA gave me a mentor and tried to push me really into doing my A licence and down that route. And I went into coach ed quite early. I was 22 when I was delivering level 1s, which at the time now being nearly the big 4-0, were kind of unique as a female at that time. So I kind of went down the coach ed route, but yeah, I wasn't going to go into coaching. I wanted to be a PE teacher, combined with a history teacher, until like I said, till I left uni, and then thought, do you know what, I'll give it a go for a year to see if I can get something in coaching. And I worked my mum and dad's business in the morning doing office work, and then I did after school clubs, PPA time, ran the Girls Centre of Excellence then as director. And then it just evolved and got into, like I say, started working then, really fortunate, got a full-time job working for David Beckham at London, but that kind of come more because of my coach development education role. So like I said, the one at that time, I think about 6 females, maybe even 4 females that delivered on the coach education, and he needed some. So I got headhunted for one of those roles with another female called Tessa Payne that's back at the FA now. And that were it really. It ended up I've never set out that I wanted to get into coaching. It's kind of just evolved. My pathways evolved, definitely strokes of luck along the way that's evoked to where I am to now. So yeah, it's so weird. When you look back at my journey, it's weird because I wouldn't have got into the field I got in now if I hadn't gone back into the FA. I was chosen to go on the pilot of the Advanced Youth Award, and that sparked my curiosity in the psych and social. So yeah, it's I never really planned going into coaching, and it just happened, and I've just gone with it, really.
It kind of speaks towards the level of curiosity and passion you have then towards football. If, you know, from what you're saying, kind of your career path has just evolved. You kind of really had no kind of end goal in sight. But it was just you were kind of, you know, living in the moment, so to speak, just enjoying day by day. Am I correct in saying?
Yeah, and a lot of people used to say to me, where do you want to be? In fact, my Jack Lester, now at camera manager at Sheffield United, he'll say to me, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? And I'll just say, I don't know, like, I'm just, as long as I'm still enjoying it and I've got a good work-life balance, that's all that I'm happy with. And I've just got involved with it. Whereas some people I used to work with, one female in particular, she was very driven in every opportunity or job she applied for or course she did was to a purpose and a goal that she always dreamed of. That's not being the case with me. And I can remember sat listening to Sturge. I'm really close to Pete Sturgis. And I can remember Sturge saying something about when I pass away at my funeral, I hope that I've got a room of people that I've influenced or that I've made an impact on the game or a purpose rather than a World Cup medal. And I think that's kind of like where my focus has always been. Like, yes, it's idealistic sometimes, or a World Cup medal or work in the England squads and stuff, but it's never really been a thing for me to do that. It's more being around how to affect change, influence the game, just have a purpose, really. That's been it. So yeah, it's been a bit different.
In terms of that, then obviously understanding yourself, understanding your own pathway, understanding others' ambitions and goals, it kind of fits in nicely, segues into the neuroscience bit. I mean, from a very young age of 22, being a coach, developer, I mean, it's absolutely massive. So it's kind of no surprise that eventually you kind of gravitated towards the neuroscience aspect of football. But I suppose, was there anything, you know, reflecting back upon your career, Sally, that kind of piqued your interest as to why neuroscience wasn't being explored and why it wasn't being implemented into the footballing industry?
Yeah, definitely. So the Youth Awards got launched, and I were working in the skills program at the time. And then the Advanced Youth Award got, in 2012, put on a pilot. So I was chosen as one of the 20 to be on the pilot of the 5 to 11. So there were 5 to 11, 12, 16, 17, 21. And that was the first time really that a course had split the 4 corners into it and showed you some of the basic understanding of the 4 corner model and application. And very fortunate, went back working the skills program and delivering some of the stuff that we'd learned on the course. And the kids just seemed to be flourishing in front of us as children and as players. And I took a role, decided I'd take the plunge after that to do my A licence. So I took a role in the Girls Centre of Excellence. And I used to come home every week. And this particular player, we're really good close now, and she's done so well for herself. But I used to come home and I used to be nearly crying. I used to think, like, I can't stand her, which is awful to say now, but can't stand her. She kills me sessions. When she's not here, the sessions run brilliantly. When she's here, she's like so negative, bad egg, like a body language, like I can't get through to her. She just frustrates me. And got to a point where, for one, I wanted to know the how and the why of why we're doing what we're doing, we're working. And then 2, I started questioning about behaviour, and I got into a conversation with one of my best friends, and she works for a company that goes into schools to help practitioners look at interventions with children that's got most emotional social vulnerabilities. And she said to me, I think you're looking at it wrong, and if you actually knew the science behind it, I think you'd see a different child. And Stuart Sanker's work with, like, see a child differently, see a different child. And so I went and did a course away from the organisation, and it was very much for primary school teachers. They've never had somebody come in from sport before. So I went and I did it, and it gave you basically the latest neuroscience, stages and development of the brain, and then looked at attachment theory and how then you intervene and put in interruptions into, well, what interruptions are happening in brain development, how then you intervene with creative arts, music, crafts, play, to put them back in. What's right time development, what's interrupted development. And that were basically it. And then it's just evolved over the last couple of years, putting it into a master's with Sturge, applying it, understanding the knowledge, understanding how the complexity of that subject is able to be transferred into language that are resources that actually you can understand and grasp and then relate to, because it's very, I can't simplify it because it can't be done. It's a complex subject, but it's how you excuse me, how you make it so it's accessible, basically.
And I suppose, as you alluded to there earlier on, I mean, there's so many spin-off questions I have, Sally, but I suppose just to focus on one, with it being such a niche area within football, with the research constantly evolving, I mean, how do you first stay on top of it all? And I suppose that must lead to a diversity of thoughts and opinions as to what actually the operating procedure is. So with that being said, I mean, what are the common misconceptions about the work you actually do or you have done within the FA and now at Sheffield United?
Apologies, I've just been on a webinar for 3 hours chatting, so my voice is a bit going a bit funny, so I have to keep having a drink.
When you're good, you're good.
I know, apologies. It's been like 3 hours of just chat and then back on it. Do you know what I always say in front of anybody? I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a neuroscientist. I have a curiosity around why we do certain things and what happens with behaviour. And I have a very basic knowledge of the brain and the nervous system. For me, it's around application. Also, being able to transfer it. So for me now working at Sheffield United, so the boys can understand it, the boys can know, and that's 9 to 23s, that they understand that this is what kit they've got on a very basic level. And this is what happens in states of the game, how they feel with emotions and feelings. And I think the sciences underpins it, and I try to always bring things back to that for the boys to understand. And conversations with some of the coaches have been around the best things we can give our boys in our academy system is the understanding of what works best for them. So what makes them happy, what makes them sad, how does this work then, and how do they then help that for learning and performance? And that's all we can give them, the resources to really understand themselves. And I think that's a big thing about the neuroscience is everything that happens to us and experiences gets stored in our body and our brain. So our behaviour is a result of our experiences and what want to keep us safe. And I think a lot of the time we want to go academic, and I get it. And there's a difference in academia and practitioner. And we've got to bridge that gap. And I think for me, my work at the minute is just trying to have a play around with it. What works, what doesn't, what sits, what fits, how the boys take it, how the coaches take it, and just explore it and actually not be too brought up on. I try to not be caught up on what people would think of the resources, because it's just a model that works for the boys, and as long as the boys can understand it, yeah, it's not scientific as well as it should be, but for me, I know the science behind it. As long as it helps the boys, that's all kind of that I look at, if that makes sense, if that's really answering your question. But it's a word that gets branded that makes people look brighter than what they are, and for me, it's just really the boys understanding themselves. That's it.
And then I suppose if we were to speak of some practical examples, Sally, of getting those boys to understand themselves more, one thing you alluded to earlier on was the social engagement system, priming the brain for learning. I mean, perhaps could you shed some light on some of the practices you guys have developed?
Yeah, so social engagement system comes out of polyvagal theory, which is Stephen Porges' work. And we talk around getting them in the green zone. So up for learning, up for relationships. And it's all around, so we talk, or some of the practices that we've done is around arrival activities. So even though we promote it at the FA, there's science massively behind it. So arrival activities, we've done some work on structure boards. So the boys come in and there's some structure on what they're learning, what they're going to get. It's up for connection. It makes us, so as dopamine levels get higher. So the connection, we talk around what we're going to do on connection, about placing safety. So the goalkeepers, for example, have their weekly plans sent out. Our goalkeeping departments really took loads of stuff on. Tommy and George have done brilliant with it. And so every week on the WhatsApp group gets sent out the programme for the week, but it's got on there who's coaching them, when they're coaching them, the activity, a video of good practice, and then a fun fact or a connection fact for the week. And it's just basically giving cues of safety, which then opens up conversations, which then activates our social engagement system. And our social engagement system is very much done to our threat detection. So your voice, your safety mechanisms, the role of the coach, what they say, how they say it, a smile, it all interlinks. So even though some of the strategies or some things that we do is very much surface level, you could say psych, you could say biopsychosocial, you could say sociologist, however you want to word it, it's very much surface level. The underpinning theory is underpinning. So the boys all know about the red brain, the green zone, well, the red zone, the green zone, the vagus nerve, what happens in their nervous system. But then there's the application of that on top. So this is how you learn, this is how you feel. So the strategies that we do is very much application, but the coaches and the boys know the stuff that's below it. I talk to the boys sometimes about, and I use the metaphor of Wembley. So for me, stuff that we get shown or we deliver is very much grass level, but the soil stuff is what becomes of it, the neuroscience. So the boys know about that, the coaches know about that, and that's the soil. And what we're trying to do is develop the soil. So when bedtime's it, so we'll talk about Wembley, if there's been a concert or NFL, it gets trodden down, what regrows? How's it regrow so good? Because of the soil and also the care from the ground stuff. So the relationship and co-relationship of the player and the coach enables the soil to regrow the grass, and also the children's soil and nervous system, understanding that helps to regrow. If we're doing that day in, day out, and we're hitting neurological stuff as well as grass level stuff, well, we're developing the soil, we're developing the grass, and we can see then performances on the grass. But you're also giving them the soil for what comes with life and demands of the game and life. So it's interweaved quite cleverly into our psych program. And if you want to call it a psych program, it's not a psych program, but our out-fight program, it's interweaved in that. It's interweaved in our new vision and values. It's interweaved in our daily practice. But on surface level, you would say that's the strategies that you're doing, but it's all underpinned by what we know about the brain and the nervous system.
It's a fantastic analogy to kind of underpin everything that you spoke about, Sally. And I suppose like it just gives iteration to the fact that it's, it's a never-ending game, isn't it? Youth development, not even youth development, but development at the first team level. Professionals can obtain these resources and use them to their at best use. But I suppose for me as a coach looking from the outside in, do you think is it possible to put players in the correct challenge skills bucket or bracket, so to speak, without sacrificing a little bit of the social engagement system?
Expand on that for me.
There's an issue there in the challenge skills bracket of being stressed versus stretched. And obviously, I think in youth development and player development, so many coaches have been inundated with kind of stretching or stressing players to their red zones, max performance. are we at
Yeah.
danger of kind of doing that to the detriment of something else, be it the social engagement system? Or is there an age in which we can flip the script?
I talk around the social engagement system being a preamble. So if you've got a good relationship and you put them in what we call our green zone, before then we put them into a session, we can then throw some curveballs in to stretch, if that makes sense. So but we also can, with certain players or certain aspects, get some outcomes by throwing curveballs in before we've even given the social engagement system. So, and that's all around then connection with the coach and also framing it and knowing that some will be able to cope with that and see how we get on with it and some won't. So it's hard to explain in a way, but it's, for example, we were talking the other day and we said we might just put meet in the academy at 8 o'clock and then no coaches be in, and then just say you've got to be at this postcode for 10, see how they get on, how they're going to solve the problem, whatever. So there's an understanding of when and where you use what you use. So, but for me, for the littler ones as well, we'll put them in the social engagement system, but then we'll stretch them because they'll go in and out of the red and the green zone, but it's then the role of the coach that helps them co-regulate, especially the younger ones. So I did a game the other day with them and we did like a 4v2. And I said to them, you know what, boys, like this is the session, this is what we're doing, all this. So gaming, social engagement, they had just a bit of free play. And then it was kind of like, right, boys, we're going to do this session. It's going to be tough. It's going to be frustrating for some of you. It's 4 against 2. And I get it. And I'm here to help you with it. Because, you know, sometimes on a game, we get frustrated, don't we? I saw you last week playing against X. And I'll say green, because there's a green thing there, I don't want to set name. So you're getting frustrated. And that's all right. Because you know what? That shows you care. So we're going to work on it tonight. So there's elements of social engagement system for the little ones to then frame it, to then put them in and feel it and sense it, to be able to cope with it. The older ones, we tend to try and do, put the curveballs in and stretch them. But as long as we've got that connection with moving them in and out, then they're developing the byproducts of that anyway about the stretching stuff.
It's normal. Yeah, it makes total sense. And then you're going back, it's feeding into normalizing your emotions, normalizing the human experience, being able to relate to that, creating a psychologically safe environment.
Yeah, and that's it. And we took the boys up to an outdoor adventure and put them in different environments. We took them out, like I didn't this week because I were away, but they took them off diving off the top boards, you know, like put them in different environments and going like, what's your emotions and feelings, because you're different in context. So, you know, having to go off the back of a cliff, 50 foot, you know, what's your thought process? How do you feel about it? Jumping off the top of a diving board, gone boxing today, the goalkeepers, they went go-karting the other week, you know, like what's the contextual stuff brought? So what's the connection with the coaches? So we do a lot of the stuff just to get the psychological safety, but then check and challenge. And we've done quite a bit of work with Mustafa Saka. He come in and did some presentation with us. So the coaches are quite aware of about the high challenge, high support stuff. So yeah, we try and filter it in, and it's purposeful. That's the thing for me. With anything that we do, it's purposefully planned and it's framed, and then it's explained why. And then there's a process of how did it make you feel? What's your emotions with it? I noticed this about you. And then a lot of the coaches relate it back into themselves, like, I had that. This is what happened when I got released. This is when I had this. And I think then it just connects all the learning a little bit better. And they actually realise, the boys, that it's not just them feeling that way, because boys are different a little bit with their emotions and feelings and how they perceive it. I think it's culturally that we do that. There's no difference in brain and nervous system, structure-wise, but culturally we do. And then we're in a system of power in an academy with return release that then influences that even more around, you know, I obviously not good enough to be in this system if I'm nervous about playing X, Y, and Z, when actually nerves and experiences are normal. Like we show the boys a clip of Gundala in the Champions League semi-final of like doing the team talk, talking about I'm nervous, but we're going to use it as excitement. And so it's just trying to normalize, in a sense of normalizing that emotions and feelings, just emotions and feelings, no good and bad. It's how you work with it. And then for me, sociology is the ology that's missing out of football, because power shifts and all this stuff that then happens with that then ties in. So yeah.
For me, what's interesting and what further kind of complicates it too, Sally, is that it's almost like a state of being. You never really reach a final endpoint, do you? It's kind of multiple iterations along the way.
Yeah, and things change, because I had an hour meeting last night with one of the lads, and he come in, he's like, I've got some free time, can I come and see you? I'm like, yeah. And he's just got injured, so his mindset now is totally different, and how he feels is totally different, and how he's processing is different, and we're having to build them things in now, because then later on, if he gets injured, he's already had that process. So and it's just I try with anything we do, like some of the boys have got journals, but we always link it back into what the science is telling us about journals, about your body, about your brain. And I always find something that backs it up for them. So we do like the little videos, inspirational videos, and the journal bits and whatever, but we always tie it back to the body and the brain and the nervous system, and tie it back to the fact that everybody's unique and individual because of what is stored in their brain and body and nervous system. So, and that's why we'll say to them, these are strategies. You have to be part of the process to know what works and what doesn't work for you, because we're not all the same.
And there's no substitute really, is there, for that learned experience? It's almost like a mental highlight, really, we're able to recall upon at any time.
Yeah, and you know what? I set off normally in my workshops, and we do them differently, all different ways and stuff. But I set off for the week with the boys, and I was doing it with the 23s actually, and there were about 9 of them in, and I set off, and they were like, you get a couple of nods, and then you start going through a bit of, because you're showing some clips or something, or you're talking about what you've seen, and then you start going, right, well, let's look at the science. And then you get some of like these daydreaming looks, because they're going in a bit of the red zone in immobilization. And then you bring it back to the football, and then they'll start going, oh yeah. And as soon as you start getting your nods, that's all I need, because then I know they're back in the social engagement system, and they're connecting the dots, and they're learning, and they're reflecting on things. So I think it's, when I get the glazed look, bring it back to the football. I always bring it back to the football. And I think that's probably what why I've had so much buy-in at Sheffield United, because I can link it back to the football. And that's, they know I'm a coach, they know I coach develop, they know I still work at the FA delivering all the courses. So I can just tie it back to the football and talk the football. And I think that's probably what gives me some social capital in that group.
And I suppose it's interesting, even the topic of delivering the workshops. It's one thing obviously doing it with players, Sally, but with respect, like you begun this years ago on an advanced youth award program. I mean, delivering it to coaches back then. I mean, how was it then versus how is it now? I suppose in terms of delivery, you're certainly not too theory dense, given what we discussed off camera about sciencey terms.
Yeah. Well, I were on the AY as a learner, so I wasn't on as deliverer, but I can only every, and it's my bias, but every lens or anything, when you look at coach development, I think around, well, if the learner comes in on day one of, say, the level 2 or level 1 or UFB, if they're not in the green zone and social engagement, the learning's not taking place. So there's all the stuff before it that I try to have a preamble for to get them into it. And Coach Ed's definitely gone down that route, like of, connection activities and structure board of what they're doing for the day and all that side. And so we do it, whether we know the science behind it, probably do. But I think for me now, Coach Ed, I went full circle really, and 2 years ago delivered on the Advanced Youth Award on the psych of all this work. And the biggest feedback that come back was that it was linked to the football. So they could see the application. And I think that's what sometimes happens, you get the science, but how do you then apply it? Whereas I kind of went down the left me problems from the social corner. So I went down the line, these are your problems or issues, challenges. This is the science. What's then now our view on it and how we're going to handle it? And we looked at it that way. And I think that's probably, we delivered very much surface level, grass level, whereas I think neuroscience gives you the soil level, which helps you then to practice or deliver it on the grass, which then helps to flourish the players on the grass. But definitely, I see it from my angle and very biased, but I think coaches want to know the more of the how and the why now. I think because of the youth awards and the advanced youth award and internet and the sharing information and the push forward of that, like what's next? Like what's next with it? Like where we're going to go with it? And I know it's my bias and my lens, but I think neuroscience starts to give us some answers of that and starts to challenge and develop more and help with that player development angle and coach development angle, definitely.
And obviously you're doing groundbreaking work with it now, Sally, with respect to today's generation. But what I heard on a podcast of yours before, you're speaking about the future player and obviously the effect the past year and a half would have had on children coming into the world. I mean, what type of developers do we need to be? What type of coaches do we need to be to provide for the future learner over the next coming years?
Well, early research on COVID obviously is a big indicator on anxiety, and parents and mums that obviously gave birth excluded from fathers and stuff like that, or partners. And so I think regarding COVID or not regarding COVID, COVID will have a massive effect on anxiety. As human beings, we do really well with uncertainty and certainty, which we talked about earlier around throwing some stretch and some challenge. I think understanding more about children is needed. Child development is massive for anxiety. Structure boards are brilliant for anxiety with children. I think if you look at what the data or research says about Generation Z, they're different with what's in front of us at the minute. The amount of times I hear about our YDP in England dropping off the cliff, or we need to bridge the gap. Well, we need to look at probably what the adolescent brain's telling us and the science behind that, and probably culturally why our education system doesn't help with that as well. So I think there's a couple of things. I think we need more understanding around behaviours and brain and body and child development. I think we need more understanding about adolescent brain and what happens with that and how does that help our children coming through that. Early research shows that we'll have more anxious children in 7 to 8 years because of what happened in COVID and what's happened through epigenetics, through with mums in wombs. Everything's stored, even in the womb, everything's stored. But then again, it's early research. We don't know until we get past in 8 years. And actually, if we've had a shift in some of the schools that they've gone, do you know what, they've had a year or two out, or they've had this and they need more game time, we could catch that up. We just don't know. So it's, in theory, you would say X, but it could be Y and Z. So I think it's, again, that just looking at every individual child, what is the behaviour telling you? What do they need? What could be the answers to this? What could be affecting them? What might be something different to look at? And a lot of people said to me, so what is your job then at Sheffield United? Because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a neuroscientist, I'm not one at coaching, but I work within them all. And I'm like, I just basically give different perspectives. And I think that's all I do. I just challenge thinking, give different perspectives. And then it challenges their thinking and they think about it a bit differently. And because I've not come through, we talked about it earlier, a system, now I'm in a system, my view is a bit different. Whereas, you know, not saying everybody, but majority of coaches that work back in the boys' academy have come through the boys' academy, whether successfully or unsuccessfully. So talk around, if you get educated at Cambridge or Oxford, you probably get educated by Cambridge or Oxford people, so you carry on the thinking. Whereas, so I think in a way, when I come in, I just try and change people's perceptions and thinking. And I'm just so fortunate that I've got people in there that do think about it, and they do accepting, and they are open-minded, and they do want to learn, and they're just great people that then can start to affect probably a system that probably does need a bit of change, if I'm being honest.
I think it's that divergent thinking and breadth of experiences that the football industry really is calling out for at the moment. But as you alluded to, of course, your current role within Sheffield United, I mean, do you think you can achieve any of the success in terms of implementing the latest or implementing these practices regarding neuroscience and whatnot without having that crucial support staff, without having that culture, without having that environment around? You think that's the first and foremost integral piece to ensuring this success?
Definitely. By far. I think for one, and two is to affect anything neurologically, you've got to go through a relational approach. So if you haven't got the relationships with staff, you're not really going to give anything, you're not really going to get anything neurologically developed anyway between players and staff or staff. I think I've got an amazing academy manager within Jack Lester who is open to learning, has a clear vision, but will happily take things on board, look at things and wants to challenge things as well. I think the environment's massive. We've just changed our offices. So we've got a collaboration desk. We're trying to stop out the hierarchy for opinions and all that side of it, which again comes back to sociology of capital and power. And the relationships and the people that are in there, I first went in and had a little look round for a couple of weeks just to get a feel of it. And also there were no point me going in if I couldn't influence and impact, because I'd get frustrated and I wear it all over my face. So that's what I need to work on. But the personalities and the environment that they're in and the different thinking is brilliant, and something that come up, well, months back now, and we had 3 posts come up for some part-time staff. We had 113 applicants and not one female. And so I said it in front of everybody. So Jack were in his office, pops, which he never normally sits in his office, to be honest. Oh, please don't, like, come out. And he said, what do you want me to do about it? Not in a bad way, just what do you want me to do about it? Like, you're right, we've got 113, no females, what? And I said, well, on every application now in an academy, you've got to have academy experience. I said, so I wouldn't have even got looked at in an interview. So he said, well, of course we would have. I said, you would now, you know me. You wouldn't have before, probably, or just on a blank canvas with no academy experience. So he said, fair point. So we've took it off. So now on our job roles, you can apply for our job roles with no academy experience, which we've had a couple come in now with no academy experience. But like you said, they bring divergent thinking. So the environment that we set within that academy and how people are and how they interact, it's massive for our vision, which our vision states a new vision that we put together, but it states about everything's got to be done through a relational approach, and it has, through a psychologically safe relational approach. So yeah, the people are what, definitely the people that make the impact. And it's not, I'm only in a couple of days a week, so all my job really is just to nudge and to push, and then they kind of like see it and then roll with it. So it's not really, I'm just giving a little bit of the science, but actually it's a lot of their work, if being honest.
And I suppose this, the success speaks for itself, having people like yourself on board and all the academy graduates, the club managers to churn out on a never-ending basis, really. But I suppose as we begin to close, Sally, you mentioned earlier on about how it was your end goal to ultimately influence multiple people, get them into the room of neuroscience. But to make it practical then for those that are listening, be they working at grassroots level, be they working in a professional game, I suppose what's the smallest thing they can do tonight to implement within their coaching?
Do you know what? It don't sound neuroscience at all, but there's loads of science that backs it up. But I would say smile. I know this sounds really daft, but how a coach face and tone is with children or with anybody, with players or with staff, will affect their threat detection system. And our threat detection system comes from our corner of our eyes down to the bottom of our mouth in like a triangle. And that's because when we're babies, we get passed round and then we're all around this face. That's why probably masks will have had an impact on that. If we're good at using his eyes, probably not. But if not, it's probably had an impact on our threat detection system. So I would say what we say and how we say it and the power of a smile, it seems very fluffy, the power of a smile, but actually it's massive. So massive for our children, for players, for connection. And like I said, we use the term, it's Dr. Treisman's work about correction before connection. Well, connection before correction, sorry. And that's all comes down to that. It's all to do our threat detection system, whether you're in the green zone or the red zone before we even start. So power of a smile is massive. And then I always advocate in grassroots, still in elite, but more so in grassroots because I normally get the timetable in the elite stuff, but a structure board of what's coming, like what's happening tonight, because some children will come in and say to you, what we're doing tonight, or what we're doing a weekend, we're playing the weekend and we just go, I'll just concentrate on this for a minute and then I'll tell you in a bit. But actually they can't then concentrate on it because they're worried about what's coming next. So putting it on a little structure board, just go in 6 o'clock arrival, 6:10, practice, 6:40 game, home time at 7. Some children that don't need it, so that again, uniqueness, they'll come in, they'll just get a ball and start. Some children will come in, check it, and then they're settled and they're in. So just something as simple as a greeting of a smile, and a name. Like we talk about names, like how many times if somebody gets your name wrong, does it evoke an emotion? Around the times you like to think about what names you're going to give your children. It's massive. So a smile, a name, and a structure board is probably, even though it don't sound neuroscientific, it's quite scientific in the neuroscience stuff that obviously helps us with our building our brains for safety.
That's what people are gravitating. That's what people are gravitating towards, especially as football coaches. You know, something that's simple, something that's practical and ready to use straight away. And I suppose, Sally, I've really enjoyed this chat. I know so many others will get so much value and would have enjoyed our conversation. But just finally to close, as we ask every guest, I suppose, what's your one bit of advice for anyone that wishes to enter the football industry like yourself, either through cultivating their niche or going down the coaching route?
Do you know what? I'm going to go left field with it. I think you need a niche these days, if I'm honest. So find a niche, because there's so many people out there. So find a niche. But my biggest advice when I've had anybody I've mentored at the FA or has been with me, all I've said to him is my biggest advice I can give you is work hard and be kind to people, and that's it. Because you know what, football is a small industry. Be authentic, don't conform, and just work hard and be nice to people, and that's all you can be, and you'll go far with that.
I think that's a fitting way to close the show. Sally, you've been very generous and kind with your time. It's been great to get an insight into your thoughts, and I wish you continued success with yourself and within your role at Sheffield United.
Thanks, Connor. Been lovely to chat. Thank you for the invite.